I worked the F1 Las Vegas Grand Prix, and something happened that night that still haunts me. When Beyoncé stepped onto that track, I saw something in her eyes that changed everything. It wasn't just the pressure of the event. There was something darker, something controlling her. I didn't know it then, but that race wasn't just about speed. The track was a gateway, and once I saw what happened, I was marked. What I witnessed, I'm not supposed to talk about, but I can't keep it inside anymore. I had been to my fair share of high-profile events, but there was something different about the F1 Grand Prix in Las Vegas. This wasn't just another race. This was the event of the year. The kind of spectacle where the elite gathered to flex not just their wealth, but their power. Las Vegas itself had always felt like a playground for the rich and famous, but the F1, it was on another level. The air was thick with anticipation, the kind you only feel when something much bigger than a race is at stake. Walking into the paddock, I could feel it. The energy was unlike anything I had experienced before. Sure, the lights were brighter than usual, the crowds were louder, but it wasn't just that. There was this unshakable sense of waiting, like everyone there was expecting something to happen. The buzz wasn't about who would win or lose. It was about what was about to unfold. This was the kind of event where power didn't just play out on the track. It was in the air, in every glance exchanged, in every handshake, every quiet whisper. This wasn't just a sport. This was a meeting of minds, of the chosen, the ones who pull the strings of the world. As I made my way through the inner areas of the venue, I saw the usual faces, celebrities, billionaires, the ones you always hear about in tabloids or see on TV. But it wasn't just their faces that stood out. It was the way they carried themselves. There was a certain coldness in the air around them, a calculated composure. They didn't need to talk much. They were all part of something much bigger than any of us. Something far darker. I'd heard the rumors about the F1 in Las Vegas. People said there were more than just the high-speed cars and the famous faces. They said the F1 was a place where connections were made, not just for business deals or sponsorships, but for things that shouldn't have been happening. People said it was a kind of ritual, a gathering for the powerful, a place where decisions were made, not just for sports, but for global control. But up until that point, I'd dismissed it. I'd seen strange things before at big events, but nothing that made me truly believe that there was some secret society running the show. At least, not until I stepped into the paddock and felt the weight of it all. The way the people moved, the way they talked to each other. It wasn't just the usual chatter about race stats or car performances. No. This was different. These weren't just rich people attending an event. These were players in a game far beyond what the public could see. And they were all looking at each other like they were waiting for something to happen. Like the F1 was more than just a race. Like it was the beginning of something much bigger. And then, as I made my way closer to the track, I saw the first hint of what I had been feeling. The F1 wasn't just a venue. It was alive. The track itself had an energy about it, a force that seemed to pull in the right people. People with power, people with control. And I knew, even though I couldn't quite explain it, that this race was going to be unlike anything I had ever seen. It wasn't about who crossed the finish line first. It was about who controlled what happened after. And the more I looked around, the more I started to realize that the race wasn't the main event at all. It was just the cover. But this wasn't just a race. It was something much more dangerous. And I hadn't even begun to see it yet. The F1 Grand Prix is famous for its star-studded lineup, but nothing quite compared to the moment Beyoncé arrived. It wasn't just the crowd's reaction that struck me. It wasn't the sheer scale of the show or the frenzy of cameras that followed her every move. No, what struck me, what shook me to my core, was the energy that shifted the moment she stepped foot onto that track. The air itself felt different, charged, as if her presence had triggered something that none of us understood. I was on the ground level, behind the barricades, doing my job when I first saw her. It was almost like time slowed down. The way she walked, the way the crowd parted for her, it was like she wasn't just entering a venue. She was entering a realm all her own. You hear about the power some celebrities exude, but what I saw in that moment went beyond that. This wasn't just a star entering a space. This was a force entering the very atmosphere of the event. As she walked by, I locked eyes with her. It only lasted a moment, but it felt like a lifetime. And in that instant, I felt it. A coldness. A stillness that wasn't there before. It wasn't the usual presence I'd seen from her on stage or in interviews. No, this was something else, something darker. And it wasn't just me. It was like the whole energy of the place shifted when she passed. The crowd, which had been alive with excitement just seconds before, went eerily quiet. Everyone was watching her, yes, but there was something about her gaze, something about how she looked at us, that made the air thick with tension. At first I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was the exhaustion of the day. Maybe the lights were playing tricks on me, but I couldn't ignore it. The feeling lingered, settled into my gut like a heavy stone. She wasn't just walking onto the track. She was absorbing something from it. The way the crowd reacted to her. The way the light seemed to flicker when she passed. They weren't normal reactions. They felt ritualistic, like something much larger was happening beneath the surface. Something that none of us were meant to see. As Beyoncé moved through the paddock, her energy was almost magnetic. People were drawn to her, but not in the typical celebrity-obsessed way. No, it was like they needed to be near her, like they were compelled to be in her presence. I watched her interact with a few key figures in the crowd, and I noticed something unsettling. It wasn't a normal conversation. There was no small talk, no idle chatter about how great the cars were or how the race was going. It was something far more intense. It was like they were exchanging information, but not with words. It was a connection that was deeper, more personal, like she was downloading something straight from the universe, and those around her were just as deeply connected. That's when I began to feel it, the weight of the moment. It wasn't just the anticipation of the race. It wasn't just about the celebrities or the business deals or the flashing cameras. This was bigger, much bigger. I'd heard whispers before about the dark side of high-profile events, but seeing her interact with the people around her, feeling the shift in the energy of the entire venue, made me realize this wasn't just an ordinary show. There was a power here that no one was talking about, a power that could control and manipulate everyone involved. Beyoncé wasn't just there for the race. She was there for something else, something ancient. And I was starting to understand that the track, the crowd, the entire event, they were just part of the ritual. The real show hadn't even begun yet, but that was just the beginning. Because as the race kicked off, things would only get darker. There's something about the F1 Las Vegas Grand Prix track that hits you the moment you step onto it. It's not just the smooth, polished asphalt or the roar of the cars racing by. It's the vibe of the place. It feels alive. I'm not talking about the usual buzz of a live event. I mean, a deeper, almost unnatural kind of life. The kind of energy that's impossible to ignore. I thought I was imagining it at first, but the more time I spent on the track, the more it became undeniable. Something here was controlling the atmosphere. Something that didn't belong. I remember standing at the edge of the track, preparing for the next set of pit stops. The crowd was cheering as the cars zipped by, their engines vibrating through my bones. The lights were brighter than ever, the sounds louder. But it wasn't the cars or the fans that had me on edge. It was the feeling that the track itself was watching. There was this presence that loomed over everything. It wasn't just the electric atmosphere of a high-profile race. It was something else. The track seemed to suck the energy from everything around it and draw it into itself. The air was thick, like a storm was brewing, but there was no rain, no wind. Just this unbearable tension that I couldn't explain. At first, I brushed it off as the weight of the event, the pressure of being surrounded by so many influential people. But the longer I stood there, the more I realized that the energy wasn't coming from the people. It was coming from the ground beneath me, from the track itself. The more I looked around, the more I noticed the strange way people were moving, the way they seemed to be drawn to certain places on the track. It wasn't random. They didn't just stand where it was convenient. They gravitated toward specific spots, as though they were guided by something unseen. I saw it in the way certain individuals gathered near the starting line, their faces etched with intent. They weren't here to just watch a race. They were here for something much darker. I didn't know it then, but I would soon learn that the track wasn't just a venue. It was a place where power was exchanged. A place where decisions were made, not with words, but with a kind of unseen, unspoken connection. It was a conduit for something ancient, something that had been there long before the first car ever roared down its length. As the race continued, I noticed the way the cars seemed to react to the track, like the road itself was guiding them. It wasn't just a racetrack, it was a portal. The cars were moving faster, but there was something about the way the drivers navigated the course that didn't make sense. It was like they weren't just steering the vehicles. They were being pulled along, like the track had some kind of control over them too. I could see the tension in their faces, the way they fought to stay in control of the wheel. But there was something almost supernatural about the way they maneuvered through the corners. They weren't just racing, they were being led. And I couldn't shake the feeling that the track itself was alive, pulling them forward, pushing them faster, deeper into whatever secret ritual was unfolding. But it wasn't just the drivers who felt it. As the race drew closer to its climax, the crowd grew more intense. People were standing on their tiptoes, leaning over the barriers, eyes locked onto the cars as if they were waiting for something. Waiting for the exact moment when the entire event would shift, when the race would reveal its true purpose. I could feel it in the air too. The sense of anticipation, the subtle feeling that we were all standing on the precipice of something bigger, something we weren't meant to understand, but were somehow drawn to. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just a race, it was a ritual, a gathering of the elite, and the track wasn't just the battleground, it was the center of it all. This wasn't about who crossed the finish line first, it was about who controlled the outcome. It was about who had the power to guide the race, to direct its course, to control everything around it. The cars, the crowd, the event itself. It was all part of something much more dangerous. And it wasn't just the F1 that had this kind of power. I started to realize that all of these high-profile events were linked in ways I hadn't imagined before. They weren't just entertainment. They were rituals, gatherings of the most powerful people in the world, where deals were struck, power was exchanged, and dark forces were tapped into. I looked around the paddock, my eyes scanning the crowd, and for the first time, I understood the truth. The people here weren't just spectators. They were participants. Whether they knew it or not, they were part of something bigger. They were part of a system that controlled everything around them, from the cars to the drivers to the very track beneath our feet. The F1 was just a surface-level spectacle, but underneath, it was a place where power was born, where ancient forces were given form and function. As the race reached its final laps, I felt it again. That energy, that presence. It wasn't just the crowd. It wasn't just the cars. It was the track. The track was the center of it all. And I was starting to realize that the reason everything felt so magnetic, so unnatural, was because the track itself had power, real power. Power that went beyond the material world. It was the kind of power that could control the lives of those who walked on it. And the more I saw, the more I realized I was already a part of it. I had stepped onto that track, and now I was tied to it, whether I liked it or not. I didn't know it then, but that track wasn't just drawing them in. It was drawing me in too. By the time the race hit its peak, something had shifted. I could feel it in the air. The usual excitement of the crowd, the roar of the engines, the flashing lights, all of it seemed to blur into the background. What had started as a high-speed competition had evolved into something darker, more deliberate. And as I watched the figures around me, I realized that the event wasn't just about a race anymore. It was about power. It was about control. And I wasn't just watching it unfold. I was part of it. As Beyoncé stood by the track, her presence dominating the space around her, I couldn't help but notice the way she interacted with those around her. She wasn't just a celebrity being greeted by a sea of fans. She was the center of attention in a way that felt different, unnatural. The energy around her was electric, but not in the usual way. It was as if the very air thickened when she entered a room or when she walked past. People didn't just look at her. They followed her, like they were waiting for some unspoken signal, some indication of what to do next. I watched as she moved through the crowd, greeting a few key figures, business tycoons, global influencers, the kind of people you only hear about in whispered conversations. But there was something unsettling in the way they treated her. They didn't speak to her like they would anyone else. They didn't respect her. They revered her. It wasn't admiration. It was a deeper connection, like they were part of something much bigger, something hidden beneath the surface. Then I saw it. Her interaction with Lewis Hamilton. It wasn't just a brief handshake or a nod of mutual respect. It was a silent exchange, a connection that felt more like a ritual than a conversation. I saw them stand near each other, speaking in hushed tones. It wasn't just about the race or even about their mutual admiration. There was something deeper, something that neither of them could put into words. It was as if they shared a knowledge, a bond that the rest of us weren't privy to. I couldn't hear their words, but I didn't need to. It wasn't in the words. It was in the way they held each other's gaze, in the way their body language synced perfectly. They were exchanging something, but not a business deal, not a casual conversation. This was something much darker. It was like they were both part of a ritual, one that tied them to the power of the track, to the hidden forces that controlled everything. They weren't just standing there in the same space. They were becoming one with it. The way they moved after that interaction only solidified what I was beginning to realize. There was something ritualistic in their every move, every glance, the track, the energy in the air, even the crowd. It was all part of a larger picture that I couldn't fully see yet. I wasn't just witnessing this power. I was being drawn into it. The way the people around me were acting, the way they looked at each other, the way their eyes followed Beyoncé's every movement. It was all part of something bigger, something far darker. I noticed that people weren't just watching the race anymore. Their eyes weren't on the cars. They were on the people. The drivers, the stars, the influential figures. Everyone was looking for a sign. Something that would confirm the power they were all a part of. The track had become more than just a physical space. It had become a sacred ground, a place where the elites gathered to exchange their influence, to feed off the energy of the event. And Beyoncé? She was at the center of it all, like some kind of chosen vessel, channeling the power that the track was pulling in from everyone around her. The crowd had grown more intense, their focus laser sharp. They were no longer just spectators. They were participants in a much larger ritual. They were feeding into it, consciously or unconsciously. And the more I looked around, the more I realized this wasn't just about power, it was about control. Those who had power over the race, who had power over the people at the event, were directing the energy of it all. They were controlling the flow of everything, from the cars to the crowd to the very atmosphere around us. I saw a shift in the way the elite interacted. It wasn't just about their status, their wealth, or their public personas. It was about the power they wielded in these moments. They weren't here to witness a race. They were here to feed into something ancient, something hidden. And Beyoncé was their key. She wasn't just a performer or a celebrity. She was the one who connected them all to the dark power of the track, the power that was controlling everything. As the race wound down, I began to feel a deep sense of unease. This wasn't just a show. This wasn't just a competition. This was something far more dangerous. Something I couldn't fully understand yet, but something I knew I had been drawn into the moment I stepped onto the track. The feeling in the air wasn't just excitement, it was anticipation. The kind of anticipation that comes before something huge, something world-changing. It was like we were all waiting for the moment when everything would come into focus, when we'd all understand just how deeply we were tied to the event, to the ritual unfolding before us. I didn't know it then, but this wasn't just a race. It was the beginning of something much bigger, much darker. And Beyoncé? She wasn't just a spectator, she was the center of it all. The key to unlocking whatever was going to happen next. But this was just the beginning of the nightmare, because the more I saw, the more I realized I wasn't just witnessing it. I was becoming part of it. The final laps of the race were approaching, but I wasn't looking at the cars anymore. My attention was fixed on Beyoncé, standing just off to the side of the track, her eyes locked on the action. It was strange. No, unnatural, the way she stood there. It wasn't the usual focus of a celebrity taking in a high-profile event. No, this was different. She wasn't just watching. She was absorbing it. Her posture, her gaze. It was as if she was channeling something, drawing in every ounce of energy around her. The closer I looked, the more I realized that something had changed. Something deep. Something powerful. Her eyes. Those eyes. They were different. They were colder. Empty. Like she wasn't present anymore. It was like someone else was inside her, and it wasn't the usual intensity or confidence I had come to expect from one of the biggest stars in the world. It was something far more disturbing. It was like she had been taken over, possessed by something far beyond our understanding. The feeling hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't explain it, but I knew in that moment that she wasn't herself. It was as if the very essence of who she was had been replaced by something darker, something otherworldly. And when I looked at the people around her, the way they gazed at her, like they were in awe of her power, I realized I wasn't the only one who felt it. They all knew what I had just started to understand. She wasn't just part of the event. She was the center of it. The conduit for something greater. And the track had given her that power. The track had become the gateway. And now, she was the key. I couldn't take my eyes off her. Her gaze moved from the track to the crowd. And as she scanned the faces around her, I swear, I saw something shift in the air. It was as if she was looking into their very souls, seeing things that no one else could. People around her seemed to stand straighter, to straighten their posture. It was as if they were waiting for something to happen, waiting for her to make a move, to give them permission to act. And I couldn't help but feel it. We were all part of this moment. We were all being pulled into her orbit, whether we liked it or not. I didn't understand what was happening. I couldn't. But the way the people around her acted, it was like they were no longer in control of themselves. They were controlled by her, by the track, by something far darker than I could have imagined. And I started to see the truth. The F1 wasn't just a race, it was a ritual. A dark, ancient ritual where the elite came together not just to race cars, but to exchange power, to channel energy. They weren't just here for the sport. They were here to become something more. And Beyoncé, she wasn't just playing her part, she was leading it. I watched her as she moved through the crowd. The way she glided across the pavement like she was walking on air. People parted for her without a word, eyes locked on her, mesmerized by her presence. And I began to realize it wasn't just the crowd that was under her spell. It was the entire event. Every person there, every car racing down the track, every flicker of the lights above. It was all part of something far more sinister, something that none of us could fully comprehend. But we were all connected to it, connected to her. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for what would happen next. As she stood near the track, her hands raised slightly, her eyes locked on the horizon, I saw it again. That look, the emptiness in her eyes had deepened, become more intense. It wasn't just a loss of emotion, it was a loss of self. She was no longer Beyoncé, the woman I had seen on stage, the icon everyone knew and loved. She was someone, or something, else. And in that moment, I understood. She wasn't just here for the race. She was here because she was the chosen vessel. The one who could channel the power of the track, of the energy that flowed through the event, and direct it wherever she wanted. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. The F1, the crowd, the race, it was all part of something much darker than anyone could have guessed. The track itself was more than just a physical space. It was a living, breathing entity, a place where power was gathered, exchanged, and amplified. And Beyoncé? She wasn't just participating in this event. She was leading it. She was the one who could tap into the deepest parts of the energy that flowed through the race. She was the one who could control it. And now, I could feel it. That dark power. It was pulling at me, wrapping around me like a tightening coil until I could barely breathe. And I realized something that terrified me. I was part of it. I was no longer a passive observer. I had become part of the ritual. I'd been pulled in. And now, there was no way out. But the worst part was yet to come. The race had ended, but the unease didn't leave. The cheers of the crowd slowly faded, the cars cooled down, and the chaos of the pit stops subsided. But inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had happened. Something changed. The night had started as a typical high-profile event, the kind where you rub elbows with the rich and famous, watch the cars race, and forget about it all the next day. But not this time. This time, I knew I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to see. Something that I couldn't forget. I left the track, but the feeling of being followed never left me. It wasn't just the usual exhaustion after a long event. It wasn't just the buzz of the crowd or the adrenaline from the race. It was the feeling that something had shifted, and I was now a part of something far beyond my control. As I walked through the venue, I could feel the weight of it all. The way people moved around me. It was like they were aware of something I wasn't. I wasn't just a witness anymore. I was part of the spectacle, part of the event, and I didn't know how to get out. I kept my head down, trying to shake off the unease, but it was impossible. The whispers, the looks, the glances that lingered a moment too long. They were all part of it. The energy in the venue was still thick, still charged, even though the event had ended. And when I looked around, I could see the other staff members, the ones who had been there from the beginning, still buzzing with that strange intensity. They weren't just tired from the event. No, it was like they were still connected to something that didn't belong in our world. I realized, with a sinking feeling in my stomach, that the F1 wasn't just an event. It was a gathering, a ceremony, and we were all participants in something that was bigger than just the race. And now, I was tied to it. I went back to my hotel room, hoping that some distance would help clear my head. But the moment I closed the door behind me, it hit me. I wasn't alone. I could feel it. Something or someone was watching me. I couldn't explain it, but I knew. It was like I could feel eyes on me, like I was being hunted, even though no one was there. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just paranoia, just the stress of the event, but deep down I knew better. I had seen something at the F1, and now I couldn't escape it. The next few days were a blur. I tried to go through the motions, pretending everything was fine, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. Beyoncé, and those eyes, those cold, empty eyes. I couldn't get them out of my head. They weren't just haunting me. They were following me. I could feel it in every dark corner, in every shadow. I'd seen it before in other high-profile events. Those little moments where reality feels like it's bending, where you get a glimpse of something much darker, something you weren't supposed to see. But the F1, that night, it was different. It felt like I had stepped into a world that wasn't mine to witness. And now, I was trapped in it. I started to notice the signs everywhere. The strange way people would look at me when I passed by, the way they would speak in hushed tones when I walked into a room. I wasn't just paranoid, I was marked. I had seen what wasn't meant to be seen, and now I was living with the consequences. It was like I couldn't escape the pull of the track. The people I had seen there, the way they had interacted, it was all part of something bigger, something that was far beyond my understanding. And the worst part, it was like the more I tried to distance myself from it, the stronger the pull became. The power was following me. One night, I decided to leave town, to get as far away from Las Vegas as I could. Maybe I thought I could outrun it, whatever it was. But as I drove through the streets, something felt off. The usual neon lights of Vegas felt more oppressive, like they were watching me. The world around me felt distorted, like I was seeing everything through a fog. I couldn't explain it, but I felt it in my bones. The energy was still there, lurking beneath the surface, waiting to drag me back in. I kept driving, hoping that the feeling would go away, but it never did. It wasn't the city, it wasn't the people, it was me. And that's when I realized it. I wasn't just a witness to what happened at the F1. I was part of it. I had stepped into that world, and now I couldn't escape. I had seen too much. I had been marked by the track, by the power that flowed through it. It didn't matter where I went. It didn't matter how far I ran. That world was with me, following me, keeping me tethered to something I didn't understand. The F1 wasn't just an event. It was a gateway. And once you stepped through it, you couldn't leave. You were tied to it, whether you wanted to be or not. As the days passed, I felt more and more like I was sinking into it. The people I saw in Vegas, the whispers, the dark glances, it was all part of a ritual, one that I had unwittingly become a part of. And now, no matter what I did, I couldn't escape it. The more I saw, the more I realized I was marked, and nothing would ever be the same again. But I didn't know how deep it ran. What I didn't know was that I was marked. It's been years since that night at the F1 Las Vegas Grand Prix, but I still feel it. Every time I hear about the event or about high-profile gatherings like it, the same chill creeps up my spine. I can't escape it, no matter how much I try. The F1 wasn't just a race, it was a portal, a doorway into something much darker, something much more dangerous. And once I crossed through it, there was no going back. What I didn't realize then was that the F1 wasn't just another event where the elite came to watch fast cars. It was a place where the most powerful people in the world came to exchange power, to feed on it. The race, the spectacle, they were just the cover. The real business, the real ritual was happening beneath the surface, in the way the energy of the event flowed, in the way people connected. Beyoncé wasn't just there to entertain or even to be a part of the spectacle. She was chosen. She was there to guide the power that the track itself had begun to channel. She was the conduit, and I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. At first, I thought I had witnessed something extraordinary, a glimpse into a secret world, a hidden side of the elite's life. But the more I thought about it, the more I understood. I hadn't just witnessed it. I had become part of it. The moment I stepped onto that track, the moment I locked eyes with Beyoncé, I became connected to the power that flowed through the event. The track wasn't just about speed or competition. It was a gateway. And the moment I crossed it, I couldn't turn back. I started to notice things in the months that followed. Subtle things. A shift in the way people treated me, like they knew something had changed. Like they knew I had seen the truth. It wasn't just paranoia. It was the sense that I had been marked, chosen to witness the dark side of the elite world. And now, I couldn't escape it. I'd felt the same strange energy that had gripped the F1, and now, it was following me. I began to see connections everywhere. People from that night, people who had been part of that ritual, started popping up in places they had no reason to be. Conversations about power, about control would just happen around me. I'd hear whispers, words that felt like coded language, conversations that seemed to dance around the edges of things I couldn't quite understand. But I understood this. I wasn't just a passive observer anymore. I was part of the web. The track had drawn me in, whether I wanted it or not. And now, the people in power knew it. I was tied to their world, bound to the ritual in ways I couldn't explain. And Beyoncé, the more I thought about her, the more I realized that I hadn't just seen something that night. I had felt it. Her eyes, the way she moved, the way the crowd followed her. It was like she wasn't just part of the world anymore. She was a vessel for the power that the F1 track had summoned. And that power was still alive. It had followed her. It had followed me. It didn't matter where I went, what I did, I could feel it. The pull, the weight of it. The darkness that had been awakened by that race still lingered. I could feel it whenever I stepped into another high-profile event, whenever I was around the elite. It was like the F1 had opened a door, and once you saw what lay behind it, you couldn't unsee it. That power, that force was still there. It was watching me, just like it had watched every other person who had been there. Every other person who had felt the track's pull. It's been years since the race, but every time I hear about another event, another high-stakes gathering, I can't shake the feeling that I'm still connected to it. The F1 wasn't just a race. It was the beginning of something darker. And now, I'm part of it. I'm part of a world I was never meant to witness, let alone become a part of. The track, the people, the energy, it's all still with me. Once you step into that world, once you witness that ritual, there's no going back. You're marked for life. So, here I am, years later, still haunted by that night, still living with the consequences of what I saw. And I can't escape it. Because once you've seen what lies behind the veil, once you've looked into the eyes of the power that controls everything, you can never unsee it. And you can never escape. I never thought a race could change everything, but that night at the F1, I crossed a line. The track wasn't just a place for fast cars, it was a doorway to a world of power I wasn't meant to see. Beyoncé wasn't just there for the spotlight. She was the conduit for something darker, something ancient. And I was marked the moment I stepped onto that track, the moment I locked eyes with her. I thought I could walk away. I thought I could forget what I saw. But that power, the pull of the track, followed me. It's still with me. The whispers, the strange energy, the way people look at me now. It never ends. Once you see the truth behind the F1, there's no escaping it. I thought I was just a witness. But now, I know. I'm part of it. And there's no going back.